From the studios of the Department of Communication in Phillipsburg, welcome to Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Sylvaria Jacobs.
Good afternoon, St. Martin. I'm Cedric Peterson, and welcome to episode 9 of Prime Minister Talks. I'm here with the Prime Minister of St. Martin, the Honorable Sylvaria Jacobs. Prime Minister, the activation of the EOC has taken place, and our discussion in episode 9 will focus around the national response to the coronavirus, labeled COVID-19. What has your timeline been since the activation of the EOC?
Well, I must say that we had been meeting prior to, let's say, Friday's announcement that there was a possible scare or a possible case that had passed through Juliana. We had been meeting with select members of the different ESFs within the EOC related to coronavirus, looking at our preparation, looking at our preparedness levels, and what we may or may not need in advance thereof. But on Saturday, of course, we had our full-fledged meeting. We had discussions. We talked about what we were doing, who we'd been in contact, etc., ensuring that we actually had a plan of action moving forward, because the Disaster Management Committee has been very used to dealing with hurricanes. And when I got on board, we got into talking about tsunamis and other types of disasters, including one such as this, because as we all know, since December, it's been a worldwide, everybody's been paying attention to it, even though it wasn't yet a worldwide threat Pandemic, in December, right? So we have been following WHO advice and recommendations. And of course, we also have the Prime Minister of Barbados, the Honorable Mia Mottley, during a recently held CARICOM press briefing, who stressed on contamination and strengthening of the health sector to cope with the effects and crucial areas in combating and coping with COVID-19. These also form part of some of the procedures that we already party to within our kingdom. As you know, we are part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and the kingdom also has regulations, IHR, International Health Regulations, which we are party to, and which through BAC we have been apprised of, and each ESF has gotten what the international health regulations are to ensure that ours are in line with theirs. For the most part, I can say we are. However, our key challenge as St. Martin is our size, is our lack of capacity, human as well as material, as well as location. So in a situation such as this, you would require emergency areas for being able to keep people in isolation. Mm-hmm. So this could be via the airport if they come in, or if they are determined to be a health risk in terms of having severe symptoms within the hospital. Of course, the first plan of action in all areas of the world right now is self-isolation at home. So that is what we are moving with as well. I would not want people to think that the government of St. Martin is in any way downplaying that this is a very serious situation. We've seen that it's had adverse effects not only on persons, but on livelihoods, on jobs, on the economy in general. But of course, our first priority is the lives, is human lives. And so for us, awareness, preparedness, prevention, mitigation, and response in that order. So we are focused together with the recommendations we've received from the kingdom to ensure that education and awareness takes place. That is, first of all, in our schools, and second of all, within our community. And paying close attention to, in the second part, our frontliners. Our frontliners being those people who have to have daily face-to-face contact with others as part of their jobs, as well as just in where they are, right. Basically. So children being in groups of course. All the time are key, and educating them as to safety awareness in terms of hygiene, using the proper etiquette for coughing and sneezing. You know, culturally, we just cough into our hands, but seeing that the virus can live for some time based on the droplets that would come out of your mouth when you cough or sneeze on your hands, and then you touch other things and therefore contaminate them. We are recommending that all people, and especially our children, of course, and adults. If you model that behavior, the children would learn it even faster. Cough into a tissue and throw it away. Or if there's no tissue available, you cough into your elbow. Of course, some people are going to say, hey, but it's on your elbow as well. But we're not exactly using our elbows to touch people on a regular basis. The most safe way to kill the germ is to, of course, wash your hands with soap and water vigorously for 20 seconds, or in between washes to use hand sanitizer to keep yourselves as clean as possible. So we're really pushing on that, proper health practices, hygiene practices, and there are several steps that we're taking within the different stakeholders to ensure that all of the procedures are in place.
One of them being the sensitive area that you described, which is our children.
Yes.
Can you give us an update in regard to exactly how the schools are looking at this particular case of the coronavirus and how they're actually trying their best to mitigate any types of cases within the schools?
Yes, I'm actually quite proud to say that after Hurricane Irma, we had our emergency education response team that after the hurricane turned into a special team that has been since then working on safety plans for the schools. So they have been ensuring that all schools have these plans, and then they've been meeting on the regular. So they don't function in a season of hurricane. They function all through the year because there's all types of disaster management plans that need to be in place for the school. So they have already been from long time in contact with the school. They stepped up, including with CPS. Their contact with the schools was over a month ago, since January 31st. CPS has been issuing bulletins to the schools as well as pamphlets, etc., to continue the education of our children. But on Sunday, when we activated the EOC, which was on Sunday, March 1st, a letter, one of the first things was issuing a letter to the school boards to ensure that proper steps were being taken within the school to ensure hygiene practices, so cleanliness, ensuring that there is toilet paper, ensuring that there is sanitary, soap, water, and napkins, and that they are also educating the children alongside their parents in proper coughing and sneezing etiquette.
All right, St. Martin, you're listening and viewing this episode 9 of Prime Minister Talks right here on St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM. I'm Cedric Peterson alongside the Prime Minister, the Honorable Severia Jacobs. Stay with us. In our second segment, we're going to talk about the emergency support functions and how they're coordinating their efforts along with the EOC members to be able to combat COVID-19. Stay with us. You're listening to Prime Minister Talks.
Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Silveria Jacobs.
Process for collecting receipts by online payers. Taxpayers who pay the motor vehicle tax online or at the bank collect the receipts as follows. 3 to 5 working days after the payment, taxpayers collect the receipt at the receivers. Go to the information desk in the government building indicating payment was made online or at the bank and a ticket will be issued. Or go to the kiosk and select online payment, then select receiver. The kiosk will issue a ticket. Assistance will be given at window A based on the ticket which is issued. Check the TV screens for your ticket number. With proof of payment, original valid inspection card, vehicle insurance, and 2019 motor vehicle tax receipt, the 2020 receipt will be issued to the taxpayer at window A. The process at the help desk in Simpson Bay will be the same except for the kiosk.
You ever hear Earthquake call and say, "Hello, Mr. Mara, it's me, Earthquake, coming in Tuesday around 10. No, sir, Earthquake does arrive unannounced, and when it comes, it'll shake all the sense and the sensibility out of we. Remain calm, stay inside, and do the DCH. Drop, cover, hold on. Once the shaking start and you know it's an earthquake, make a quick move to a safe place. Don't run to the doorway or any exit, and the stairs that may be broke up or even full of people. Elevator, avoid that because you might get in and then poof, power gone, and you're stuck in a box without air. Take cover under a strong table or a bed, or crouch against an inside wall or in a corner and cover your face and your head with your arms. Remember, DCH. Drop, cover, hold on. Glass windows and doors, outside walls in an earthquake, that is bad news. Take care of yourself. Most injuries during earthquakes happen when something drops and hit people entering or exiting a building. Last thing, don't bother run outside and ask, you feel it? You feel it? Remain calm, stay indoors until all the shaking stop and do the DCH. Drop, cover, hold on.
This public service announcement was brought to you by Sedema and the government of St. Martin.
Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Sylvaria Jacobs.
Welcome back, St. Martin. We are listening and viewing episode 9 of Prime Minister Talks. I'm Cedric Peterson alongside the Prime Minister Sylvaria Jacobs. We are talking about the points of entry. Actually, we're looking also at the education sector, which we just left off on in segment 1. And you address how the schools are and their plans are getting ready to, help fight this. Let's look at the other points of entry before we get into the ESF groups. The airport, the port, any word in regard to their protocols and plans in regard to helping try to mitigate any effects?
Yes, I must say the airport was one of the first entities that sent in their protocols. And when we say protocols, Cedric, I want to take a few minutes to just explain to the people of St. Martin what we mean. Procedures, plans of actions with steps and measures that are needed to be taken when dealing with a threat. So each entity, each stakeholder has their set protocols in place. And of course, since St. Martin is really like an open sepulcher, as my mother would say, you can come in by plane, you can come in by boat, and you can come in by cruise liner. Actually, the port has the strictest guidelines at the sense of stricter and able to be enforced because you're coming in on one vessel, a large number of people, and by law already, they are expected to issue health declarations from as early as 48 hours before expected arrival. Again, at 24 hours, then the port or the destination can request up to 12 and 6-hour updates if there is some reason that you think it might be a threat. So in this time, we are exercising, those protocols, I must say, are being exercised all the time. Okay? And having certain viruses on board of a ship is like a normal thing. So that's why they have to update the destination as to what is, possibly coming to your destination and what plans the ship has taken also in terms of circumventing the spread of whatever the virus is. And so they have very strict guidelines on the ships in terms of quarantining or isolating people who have, for instance, a stomach flu where they're vomiting or have, other issues going on, diarrhea, or if they have flu-like symptoms.
That's interesting. So I was trying to figure out, in light of COVID-19, does that get scaled up for them?
Well, for them, they take extra precautions because they run the risk of being turned away. Because if a destination finds it's too many, they can always say, no. And there's no facility on board to test for COVID specific. So what airlines are doing are checking your history, your travel history, screening the passengers that are coming on in terms of their travel history, because based on WHO's recommendation, you're only screening people who have been in threat areas. You are only looking at whether they have symptoms or not. And if they have traveled or been to this area within the past 14 days, then they are a high threat level, especially if they are showing symptoms. If they're not showing symptoms, as a country, we're then giving them a pamphlet with information as to should you become ill or start to feel symptoms that are recognizable as coronavirus, so sore throat, fever, problems breathing, then you should self-isolate first. If you're a resident, call the doctor, and the doctor will notify CPS. And second, if you're a visitor, call CPS. And you know that we've established a daytime emergency line, 914. So, of course, residents also can call this, but, not to, build up too much traffic because it goes directly to CPS. And that's open during the daytime. And if it's nighttime after working hours, of course, the first line you should call then is the emergency services, ambulance, emergency room, etc., who would, if it is a serious case, then notify CPS.
Of course.
Okay, so those are protocols, plans of action that have been in place already. And I must say that the port has those well in place. I mean, we are notified, public health is notified, and they have to give the okay for the ships to berth. On the airport side, we are depending on the country where the persons are coming from to have done the screening. We cannot guarantee that this is done always. So what we are doing is we have requested that there be a restriction on travel to St. Martin from the cluster areas, or persons who have traveled to the cluster areas within 14 days of their day of travel. Of course, if they can provide a health declaration that is valid, that would also give them an opportunity to avoid being quarantined or isolated upon entrance here in St. Martin. But that is what we're aiming for. It is not yet in place, but it has been decided on, and the process has started to be able to establish that with Thematic, which is a system that is being used for all types of restrictions or anything that has to do with flights.
Now, the travel restrictions you did bring up in the second press conference of the Emergency Operations Center. Is that a partnership between ourselves and the Kingdom of the Netherlands?
Well, this has to go through Foreign Affairs, our Foreign Affairs Department, so DBB. It goes through our Foreign Affairs Department, it goes through Immigration, and then on through from Foreign Affairs to Thematic. So it has not been finalized as yet, but the process has started. And as soon as that restriction has been enforced or made known then to the airlines, then we will be able to announce that it is now in place. But in the meantime, the Immigration Department has been furnished with a special card where they will be asking passengers more about their travel history to ascertain whether they have been in any of the cluster areas, and should they be showing symptoms, of course, then they will be flagged. And if they are not showing any symptoms, they will receive the pamphlet whereby they have information on what to do if they become symptomatic. So that is a strategy for now in terms of the plan of action, and those are from our 2 ports.
With the activation of the EOC, it also calls for the emergency support function groups also to kick in as well. Could you speak a little bit about the coordinated efforts of the ESF groups in regard to COVID-19?
Right. So I think we already mentioned
the airport
education.
And the port and education.
Education has not been an official EOC ESF. However, upon having the first meeting in January, I insisted, based on my previous experience as education minister and the strong role education played in the whole getting our island back on its feet, and how much had to be done in the education sector. ECYS has been added. They don't have a number as such as yet, but I would believe they would get ESF 11 once we have finalized the process. But never mind all that, they are involved in the process. We have, as I mentioned before, from that, let's call it ESF, we have the Safety and Emergency Management Committee, the SEMC, which was established in June 2018, who are doing a great job in ensuring comprehensive school safety and ensuring that disaster preparedness and the response protocols, trainings and assessments are regularly performed and assessed. So they are doing a great job coordinating with CPS since end of January, as I mentioned before. CPS is part of ESF 6. They are part of public health. ESF 6 and 7 therefore fall under the Ministry of VSA, and they are the main actors in this. So I think once we come back from break, we can go a little bit further into what CPS is doing.
Definitely. St. Martin, you're listening and viewing the episode 9 of Prime Minister Talks. Stay with us. We'll be covering more on the functioning of the ESF groups as we deal with COVID-19 as Prime Minister Talks continues. Stay with us.
Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Silveria Jacobs.
Hi, my name is Ayana Duran and I attend the St. Martin Academy High School. This month, we learn about single-use plastic and how it negatively affects the environment. Did you know that human beings consume about 250 grams of plastic per year? To learn more about single-use plastic and how you can do your part, let's all help reduce, reuse, and recycle so St. Martin can be plastic-free by 2023.
Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Silveria Jacobs.
St. Martin, welcome back. You're in the final segment of Prime Minister Talks. We left off talking about the emergency support functions and their role as we are tackling from a national perspective COVID-19, the coronavirus that has plagued us now throughout the world. PM, the other ESF groups that are actually actively involved in this particular situation, who are they?
Yes, I think for the general public to know, I think they've heard me say the word CPS
Correct.
over and over and over again. And CPS is just a small department here on St. Martin, and I must give kudos to Mrs. Ava Lista de Weaver, who has been carrying it like a trooper, even in her condition. I say, Happy Women's Day to you, Ava. You are doing a tremendous job as a young St. Martin woman. And so I must say that CPS has been busy since January 2020, doing several media campaigns through DCOM, of course, and they have also released print media and put out PSAs. We've had as CPS meetings with healthcare providers, and all this fell under the Minister of VSR prior to last week Sunday.
That's right.
So I must give commendations on the Minister Pamela Gordon-Carty as well. Meetings were held with the Red Cross, with WIMS and other institutions, St. Martin Medical Center, SZV, to determine current capacity and to take note of services and assistance that can be provided to CPS in the event of a suspected or confirmed case. The Red Cross is already trained. Princess Juliana International Airport received their information session on March 3rd. The Red Cross information session with the Regatta volunteers was on March 4th, which is yesterday. Another session is set for this Friday with the information session for school boards, principals, to be held on March 6th. WIMS will have a follow-up training on March 9th, and training of community workers and social workers is still to be determined, but is being planned. There are also meetings being held with their counterparts on the French side, and since the week of February 2nd, and CPS had several working meetings with ports of entry, with the St. Martin Laboratory. We are looking at the turnaround times for RIVM in terms of getting the testing done. So we're looking at faster ways to get the testing done. We've met with community councils. I think it's been excessive, the amount of things that ESF6 has done in terms of planning and preparation. And I think they have guided that process. The police department, ESF 5, Justice, Immigration, Customs have all been brought up to speed as well. They took part in the training that was done at the airport. We have done also, they are also frontliners. So between different entities, French side, Dutch side, the Justice Departments in border control communicate to inform whether patients or passengers, suspected passengers, have been moving left or right. That is working very well. Our healthcare ESFs are working very closely also with our French side and with BAC and DBB to ensure that foreign affairs and interior and kingdom relations are closely correlated. So some are wearing very many hats.
Of course.
And I must say, I have to commend DCOM as well for their part. And I think since you are DCOM, I will let you give a little bit more information on how DCOM is part of the
ESF functions, correct.
Functions and within the EOC.
Correct. Because once the EOC is activated, DCOM, the Department of Communication under the Ministry of General Affairs, now becomes Emergency Support Function Group number 8. And we are responsible for communications to the public, of course, and of course getting the media up to date in regards to any information coming out from the respective ESF groups. In this case, since we are dealing with a health and medical situation, our working relationship with collective prevention services is key. So messages that are simple, concise, and to the point, that allows people to be able to be educated, since that is the effort of trying to get everyone up to speed with how they can prevent getting themselves sick, catching the cold or the flu or COVID-19 being mitigated.
Right.
So this effort is definitely being done in a simple form. We want to also engage in more conversations with key stakeholders. So we will be preparing a conversation with the St. Martin Medical Center. Next week, we should be having an inside government interview with Dr. Nadiri, who is the internist at SMMC. You also saw him in the panel discussion with our press conference of the EOC. So conversations, more in-depth information about what the COVID-19 coronavirus is all about and what you can do to save yourself and, of course, your family from any type of issues is what we want to focus on.
Yes, thank you, Cedric. preparedness, prevention. Once we have found it, mitigation and response. Those are the 4 core areas that we are focused on as EOC St. Martin. And I think that we are well on our way. We are in no way downplaying the seriousness of this. We do not have everything within our control. Capacity is a serious issue. We have, as EOC, also determined how many cases, if we have them, we would have before we determine it, like we need outside assistance and pronto. So in that respect, we have already reached out and have received confirmations of where assistance will come from, what type of assistance will be rendered in terms of human resources. We've requested assistance even now before anything happens to assist CPS in terms of educating and training. So we are reaching out to different organizations that want their personnel trained or their organizations trained, to that they will be trained in safe procedures, in how to keep their areas clean. Everything just has to be at another level. You mentioned some of the communication decisions that have been made. PSAs, more PSAs will be done based on our law. The ESF that relates BTP in our meeting yesterday disclosed that PSAs can be done free of charge based on our laws. When licenses are given, each radio station will then comply in getting these PSAs out to the general public, so that we're not just relying on St. Martin Gov Radio and St. Martin Gov. St. Martin Gov.org/coronavirus, because that's where the information is at your fingertips. But for it to be involuntary and that people are getting it all day is key for St. Martin. And we've also arranged for the digital billboards to be used, the newspaper to be used, so that it is really all-encompassing across our different forms of media. So for us, it's important to educate so that we can be well prepared, that we can prevent the spread, and that we can mitigate if we have a case that any more spread takes place. So our response is key. And so I really implore the people of St. Martin to take necessary measures, just like we prepare for hurricane, to ensure that you have food, water, and supplies for 2 weeks in your homes at all times, just in case you have to self-isolate.
St. Martin, this is our final segment of episode 9 of the program, Prime Minister Talks. Prime Minister, thank you very much for being here with us in this special edition. Final words.
Yes, I would like to reiterate that the website, www.stmartingov.org/coronavirus, can give you all the information you need, whereby you can be prepared, where you can prevent, and you can mitigate. You also have the opportunity to call 914 if you are in a situation where you think you need assistance. Of course, our first thing that you should do is call your doctor as a local St. Martiner. If you're a visitor, call 914. But if you're living on St. Martin and you have a GP, call your doctor, inform them, and then they will tell you further what you have to do. But definitely practice hand washing all the time and stay safe.
St. Martin, thank you so much for being a part of a special edition of the program. We want to thank you for joining us. The Prime Minister of St. Martin will be here once again with another episode, so be sure to stay tuned in here at 12 p.m. every day until next week for the new edition of the program on St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9. And for video on demand, be sure to log on to the official government website, stmartingov.org. On behalf of the Cabinet of the Prime Minister and all of us here at the Department of Communication, thanks for tuning in.